All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. The American Secretary of State Antony Blinken has left Ukraine and his next stop is Berlin, and he'll be holding talks with American allies in Europe. Now, after wrapping up the meetings in Berlin, Blinken will be heading to Geneva, where he'll meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The final meeting will, of course, be held on Friday. Blinken has announced that he will not present a formal response to Russian proposals on the Ukrainian crisis. He's also said that the two sides need to explore common ground. Now, Blinken has reiterated that some Russian ideas are clearly and absolutely non-starters, such as barring Ukraine from joining the NATO military alliance, virtually on the doorstep of Russia. He's also promised relentless diplomatic efforts to prevent any kind of renewed aggression.
Continue our relentless diplomatic efforts to prevent renewed aggression and to promote dialogue and peace. At the same time, we continue to bolster Ukraine's ability to defend itself and make clear the costs that the United States and Europe will impose on Moscow if it rejects the diplomatic path that we've laid out and proceeds with an unwarranted, unprovoked, unacceptable invasion or destabilization of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the American President Joe Biden has predicted that Russia could make a move on Ukraine. However, Biden has said that Putin may not want a full-blown war. The American president has warned that Russia will pay very dearly in case of a full-scale invasion. Biden has also suggested that there will be a lower cost for some kind of a minor incursion, if that is what Russia intends to carry out into Ukraine.
I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine, and that our allies and partners are ready to impose severe cost and significant harm on Russia and the Russian economy.
Now, Biden's latest comments lead to confusion and also to a lot of uncertainty about how exactly the West will respond in case of an invasion by the Russians into Ukraine. Now, Biden has highlighted that a third summit with Putin is still possible. Remember, the two leaders have met twice in 2021. Biden and his team have also prepared a broad set of sanctions and other economic penalties to impose on Russia in case of an invasion. The satellite imagery by Maxar Technologies shows Russia's forces that have been deployed in 4 locations in western Russia, that is towards the border in eastern Ukraine. This region is very close to the border with Ukraine. And also as part of the military drills that Russia is carrying out, this is what is presently happening there. The Russian army pilots flew the new Ka-52 Alligator combat helicopters for the very first time at an Air Force base in the southern Rostov region near the Ukrainian border. These new helicopters are a modernized version of the older Ka-50 Black Shark type, and according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the improved battle assault systems allow the helicopters to engage in combat at any time of the day and also in pretty much any weather conditions. Tens of thousands of Russian troops are positioned along the border with Ukraine, and tensions between Moscow and the West have also reached what is being described as a bit of a Cold War high. And Moscow insists that it has no plans of invading at this point of time, but it is demanding for wide-ranging security guarantees. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman spoke with Indian Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla over a number of border and regional issues. The United States has said that it's also briefed India on the Russian military build-up at the Ukrainian border. During the talks, both sides also discussed a wide range of different issues, including the Indo-Pacific situation in the Gulf, the UNSC, cooperation, etc. The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov had a meeting with the Indian envoy to Russia, Pawan Kapoor, on Monday. The two sides exchanged views and assessments about events in Geneva, Brussels and Vienna. For India, both the United States and Russia, remember, are very close partners. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of this whirlwind diplomatic tour that Antony Blinken presently is in Europe, we are joined in by our correspondent Stuart Smith, who's joining us live from Moscow. Now, good afternoon to you, Stuart. Thank you very much indeed for joining us in this broadcast and beyond. Now, this, of course, is a crucial bit of negotiations that will unfold. Antony Blinken is trying to shore up some level of European unity to try and put forth a very united front in front of Russia. But at this point of time, Russia has put forth the security demands, and with both sides having stated their positions and not wanting to climb down from their stated positions, is it possible at all that negotiations have a chance to succeed?
Whether it's possible or not, that is exactly what US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is hoping. He said he's 150% committed to try to find a diplomatic off-ramp for Russia so that there will not be any escalation from what we've already seen, despite the US being unwilling to give in to Russia's national security demands of banning Ukraine from joining NATO and removing its NATO militaries from Eastern Europe. Clearly, the fact that these two foreign ministers are meeting in Geneva on Friday shows there is some level of discussion that both sides still feel there is to be had, despite last week spending a number of hours speaking directly, Russia speaking directly with the US, directly with NATO, and directly with the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Indeed, Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, is in Europe to try to make sure that allies of the United States provide some kind of strong front should Russia invade Ukraine, which it continues to say it has no intention of doing. So today in Germany, talking with Germany and the Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock about exactly what Germany is willing to do, because there has been some uncertainty about whether, for example, Germany would be willing to put the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline on the line should it come to it if sanctions are required. So the US will be very keen to make sure Germany is committed to doing that. There was some progress, it seems. Germany is more willing to do that than it was before, but it's not provided a 100% commitment with this new government. And then, of course, you mentioned the comments of US President Joe Biden on Wednesday, which for the first time gave some ambiguity about exactly how the United States would respond with sanctions should Russia invade Ukraine, making this distinction between a minor incursion and a major incursion. That incensed Russian senators, United States senators, Republican senators, who said this doesn't make sense to provide some kind of ambiguity. The White House later clarified the comments, saying that there is no distinction to be made, that the United States sanctions will be decisive and strong regardless of to what extent Russia does invade Ukraine, if it should do so.
Absolutely indeed. Now, Antony Blinken is, of course, in Berlin today. He'll be leaning on the Germans, especially on this very important issue of the Nord Stream 2. Now, Nord Stream 2 pipeline, gas pipeline, is very crucial for Germany for its energy security, but it's also equally important for Russia. Would Russia be willing to put the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline on the line to carry forth with any kind of even if a minor incursion to Ukraine?
Well, all the messaging coming out from Russia is that this is a project completely detached from politics, diplomacy. It's a commercial project by Gazprom, one of the Russian oil and gas majors, and it's nothing to do with any sort of political leverage. But we know the United States certainly does not see it that way. After failing to use sanctions to prevent the pipeline being committed, it is now ready being completed. It is now ready to go. The only thing left is for Germany's regulator to approve it, and then the EU's regulator to approve it. So ultimately, this is a decision for Germany to make. And the question for Russia would be, indeed, if it does get prevented from working, would that be too much of an issue? Potentially, but also on the other hand, some gas analysts say that it's not a pipeline which Russia needs to export its gas. It is purely a diplomatic tool, and so its value is in the fact that it is potentially something that Germany could choose or choose not to approve. It's from an energy export perspective, it's useful for Russia because it allows it to avoid Ukraine, but it's also definitely there as a policy option for President Putin in these negotiations.
Absolutely indeed. And my final question to you, Stuart, is that the negotiations will take place between the United States and Russia tomorrow. between Antony Blinken and Sergei Lavrov. And one of the crucial demands which the Russians have put forth is that they want the NATO alliance to roll back to the frontiers that NATO existed back in 2008. How adamant is Russia on this particular demand?
Completely adamant. There's been no sign so far that Russia is willing to back down on this demand at all. The potential room for compromise, if that's what you're looking for, is there's a distinction between a political statement that could be made, say for example, at the NATO Madrid summit this year, which is a non-binding statement but is a political statement of intent. That would be slightly different to signing an actual guarantee in writing. Maybe that's something that's acceptable to Russia, but at the same time even NATO doesn't seem willing to give even any kind of political statement. So far NATO's insisted on supporting the idea that Ukraine could one day join, and so without change on both sides, Russia can be in no doubt that this is something NATO's not willing to compromise on. And that leads to the question, were these negotiations all just a pretext for saying that there's no other solution for Russia but to use military force?
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Stuart Smith, for joining us and getting us all those updates. This, of course, is a crucial round of negotiations to see as to what actually happens. Can negotiations succeed, or will there be some military action? This, of course, is a story that we will continue to track. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.